Subconscious Power. Chapter 6, Subconscious Psychoanalysis. The term psychoanalysis, now so frequently employed, is of quite recent origin. It was originally used by Professor Sigmund Freud of Vienna to designate a system of psychotherapy devised and developed by himself, and which has since attracted a large following and secured a marked degree of public attention and interest. The method was originally designed and employed for the purpose of the treatment and cure of the borderline of mental diseases such as hysteria, neurasthenia, certain forms of neurosis, etc. But its principle since has been extended much further. The term psychoanalysis is now frequently employed to indicate certain methods of analyzing, synthesizing, and re-educating the unconscious or subconscious apart from pathological conditions. A standard reference work says, psychoanalysis is a method of psychological investigation designed for the purpose of discovering and exploring the unconscious psychic forces which are at the basis of normal and abnormal psychic manifestations. It assumes that there are definite reasons for all normal and abnormal mental activities, that no psychoneurotic symptoms are accidental or meaningless, but that they have always unconscious underlying causes which, if found and brought to the surface, become dissipated and cause the symptoms to disappear. With this assumption, Professor Freud evolved his theory of repression, which is the main pillar upon which rests the edifice of psychoanalysis. In brief, this theory states that the psychoneurotic symptom depends upon past emotional experiences of a painful or disagreeable nature, which were forgotten or repressed into a mental field called the unconscious. The aim of psychoanalysis is to bring back into the field of conscious memory all of the repressed, unbearable ideas to show the patient the connection between them and the symptoms, thus removing the latter. Dr. Wilfrid Ley, an interesting and instructive writer on the subject of psychoanalysis, says, the name given by Freud himself to the science is psychoanalysis, spelled also psychoanalysis, or the analysis of the psyche. The psyche is not merely the mind regarded as a product, a stationary or crystallized object which can be cut and dried and labeled. The mind and soul and character and body as a connected organic whole and its functions, or what it does and how it changes, are the subject of psychoanalysis, more than how its results or finite outward manifestations can be classified. Psychoanalysis naturally suggests psychosynthesis as a more constructive procedure, and that is indeed the ultimate aim of psychoanalysis, not merely to take apart, but to put together again, following a plan which is along the lines of the greatest usefulness to society. Unfortunately, for the cause of general interest in the subject on the part of the average non-professional person, the idea of psychoanalysis has become identified in the public mind with the idea of sex. This because Freud found that many of the unconscious associations revealed by psychoanalysis were composed of more or less erotic material or elements. It is forgotten that Freud employs the term sex in the general and broad sense of love, and does not limit it to the gross sexual phases or manifestations. Some of Freud's followers, moreover, have eagerly seized upon this sex element and have placed undue and often grossly exaggerated and quite grotesque emphasis upon it. In this way, they have not only attached undesirable associations to the general idea, but have also brought the special method into ridicule by reason of their unwarranted extension of the principle to the point of absurdity. In certain instances, they have not only brought about a reductio ad absurdum, but also a condition of ad nauseam. Psychoanalysis should pray to be delivered from its friends. By itself, it can take care of its enemies. In an article on the subject contained in a standard reference work, the conservative writer truly and wisely says, while psychoanalysis in the hands of competent men has undoubtedly been of great help in exploring subconscious states, some wild psychoanalysts have so thoroughly misinterpreted the sexual question that it endangers the science. In the present consideration of subconscious psychoanalysis, we shall confine ourselves to but one, though a very important one, of its several phases or general divisions. We shall not undertake a consideration of its phase of psychotherapy, a branch of the subject far too technical for popular treatment in a book of this kind. Neither shall we enter into a consideration of its specific application to the task of character building. We have considered that special subject in detail in another book of this series. We shall confine our consideration to that phase of the subject which is concerned with the discovery and cure of what are known as the negative conditions, activities, and tendencies, which, abiding hidden and undercover in the realms of the subconscious, lower planes of mentation, often entirely unsuspected, produce a harmful effects upon the mental, emotional, and physical life of the individual. In the garden of the mind, there are many beautiful flowers and rich fruit-bearing trees, rendered sickly, diseased, and withered, often indeed killed in time, by the presence of gnawing, boring, tearing, destroying creatures hidden and working beneath the surface. Rational psychoanalysis serves to locate these baneful creatures, to disclose their presence and whereabouts, to uncover and reveal them, that they may be destroyed by the mind and will of the owner of the garden. Before proceeding further, let us give you the definition for positive and negative as applied to mental states in the several books of this series. The touchstone of positivity is this: will this make me stronger, better, and more efficient? If the answer honestly given is in the affirmative, then the mental state or the other thing about which the question is asked is entitled to be classed as positive. If not, then the thing may be either neutral or else negative. You may decide into which of these two classes it fits by asking the second question. Will this make me weaker, worse, and less efficient? If you are forced to answer at will to this question, then that thing must be classed as negative. This then is the general character of the negative mental states or conditions which you seek to locate, uncover, and kill out by means of subconscious psychoanalysis. That is, the general quality, nature, or character tending to make you weaker, worse, and less efficient. Some of these negatives show their character so plainly that they, to be hated, need but to be seen. Others, more cleverly disguised by protective coloration and other means, are only to be known by their fruits. These negative influences abiding in the under the surface regions of the mental garden must be located, uncovered, and destroyed in order that you may be made stronger, better, and more efficient. These negative mental states of the subconscious, like their kindred states of the conscious, are found to belong to two great general classes: one, anger, and two, fear. The negative mental states are always found to be either varieties, subspecies, or perhaps crosses or hybrids of these two great classes of negativity. The ancient Buddhists taught that anger and fear thought are the twin devils of the emotional kingdom. They held that anger is the burning passion and that fear thought is the freezing passion, each destroying in the end the one by burning up the other by freezing. They held that the man who met, conquered, and mastered these twin devils was free to enter upon the path of mastery which leads to the land of freedom. We now ask you to discover by analysis the essential nature and character of these two general negative emotional states, anger and fear, respectively. You will discover that practically all of the lesser and subordinate negative emotional states are either phases, forms, or aspects of either one of these two general states, or else are blendings, hybrids, or crosses of the two. Anger. The general emotional state known as anger is defined as strong passion or displeasure, usually involving antagonism and the desire to punish, excited by a real or supposed injury or insult to oneself or others in whom one is interested, or by the supposed intent to do such injury, etc. In its extreme form, anger is known as rage. When the rage amounts almost to madness, it is known as fury. In its milder forms, anger is known as vexation, annoyance, indignation, etc. The more permanent emotional states resulting from anger are known as resentment, grudge, or grievance, defined as follows. Resentment is hostility aroused by a real or fancied injury, injustice, hurt, or insult, a state of moody animosity or deep and lasting smoldering anger. Grudge is state of smoldering anger, sullen malice or malevolence, cherished animosity, enmity, ill will, dislike, spite, or hatred. Grievance is the feeling of the burden, hardship, and oppression resulting from a real or fancied wrong, insult, injustice, or injury, accompanied by the feeling of resentment or grudge resulting therefrom. The essential elements of anger in any and all of its forms and phases are A, keen displeasure, discomfort, and discontent, B, resentment or grudge, and C, more or less desire to punish or get even with something or somebody associated with the real or fancied injury, injustice, wrong, hurt, or insult, giving rise to the feeling. Fear. The general emotional state known as fear is defined as a painful emotion or passion excited by the anticipation, expectation, or apprehension of possible or probable hurt, injury, wrong, insult, or other painful, unpleasant, uncomfortable, or discontenting experience. Its extreme phase or form is that of panic. Next in decreasing order is the form of terror, then that of dread. Lesser forms are also known as apprehension, anxiety, alarm, care, solitude, etc. All phobias, i.e., aversions and dreads, are forms or phases of fear. Blendings, hybrids, and crosses. Among the many blendings, hybrids, or crosses of anger and fear are found the apparently widely separated emotional states known respectively as jealousy, envy, hatred, malice, spite, intolerance, prejudice, also remorse, shame, mortification, humiliation, the sense of inferiority, distrust of self, cowardice, and similar mental states or complexes. In the case of some of the above named emotional states, you will find no difficulty in discovering and recognizing the presence of anger and fear in some of their various degrees, forms, phases, aspects, or modes of combination and blending. In the case of others, you may at first doubt the presence of one or the other, or both of these fundamental emotions, but a careful analysis will reveal the blending of both of these elements, which combined with certain ideas constitute forms of what is known as the complex, i.e., a combination of feeling and idea. In each and all of them, you will find a feeling of pain, discomfort, or discontent, B, a resentment or grudge and the desire to get even with something or someone, and C, a desire to escape from, avoid, or get rid of something which is painful, unpleasant, uncomfortable, or discontenting, either present or regarded as a possible or probable event or happening. There is always the phobia in at least some form of resentment or grievance. These negative, complex emotional states are always found to be associated with some past time, real or imagined experience in which the pride, vanity, egotism, self-respect, or sense of justice of the individual has been wounded, hurt, bruised, or injured in some way, whether or not he has received physical or financial hurt or injury. The emotional hurt is the predominant factor. The emotional castle of the self must be invaded in order that these states may manifest. A little thought will show that this is so, though at first you may be disposed to doubt the statement. The elements of humiliation, mortification, and sense of injustice are the most frequent and often the strongest elements involved in the manifestation of resentment, grudge, and grievance, and such constitute the most troublesome and most persistent of the subconscious roots, sources, and causes of mental, emotional, and physiological disturbances, impaired functioning, and tendency toward exaggerated activity. There is no need here for a recital of the well-known facts of the detrimental effect of certain negative mental states upon physical conditions and upon mental health and normal functioning. These are now matters of common knowledge, thanks to the reports of the investigations of the past 25 years or more. The mental cause of diseases is a subject concerning which practically every person of average intelligence now has at least some knowledge and to which he extends at least some degree of belief. That mind and body act and react upon each other is now universally accepted, and that certain harmful emotional states, particularly when manifested excessively and in extreme form, result in mental disorders, unsoundness, and abnormal conditions is now equally well known and accepted. Most persons, however, have no suspicion that such emotional states persist, often long after the conscious memory of them has passed away. The individual, though he realizes that the evil they do lives after them, does not imagine that their evil qualities, which are interred with the bones, continue to manifest their baneful tendencies beneath the surface of the conscious mentality, and that they have really been buried alive, and that long after they have been forgotten by the consciousness, they are alive and busily at work, gnawing, boring, and cutting at the roots of the plants in our mental garden. Such, alas, is the case. Freud and his school of psychoanalysis have paid especial attention to this fact and have sought for and devised efficient methods whereby these subconscious moles, gophers, worms, and other underground destroyers may be located, uncovered, and destroyed. This indeed is one of the chief offices and purposes of psychoanalysis. Referring to the descriptive statement concerning psychoanalysis given at the beginning of the present section of this book, we ask you to consider once more the following fact. Psychoanalysis is a method of psychological investigation designed for the purpose of discovering and exploring the unconscious psychic forces, which are at the basis of normal and abnormal psychic manifestations. It assumes that there are definite reasons for all normal and abnormal mental activities, that no psychoneurotic symptoms are accidental or meaningless, but they have always unconscious underlying causes, which, if found and brought to the surface, become dissipated and cause the symptoms to disappear. The aim of psychoanalysis is to bring back into the field of conscious memory all the repressed, unbearable ideas, to show the patient the connection between them and the symptoms, thus removing the latter. This being understood and remembered, let us now proceed to consider why and how these unbearable ideas become repressed and how they may be discovered and brought to the surface by psychoanalysis. In the first place, you're asked to realize that every human being has experienced many instances of pain, discomfort, and discontent of quite a marked, intense, and poignant, i.e., piercing, sharp, pricking character. This is particularly true in the stages of infancy, childhood, youth, adolescence, in which such experiences frequently take on an exaggerated character. The developing emotional nature of the infant or young child, the child under 5 years of age, sometimes undergoes emotional bruises and hurts, which, though apparently forgotten, frequently leave effects which persist during the entire afterlife of the individual. The same is true of the young boy or girl up to and including the age of adolescence. Many of the most persistent and annoying underground gnawers are those which have been placed in the subconscious mind during the years of adolescence, youth, early childhood, and even in infancy. This fact has been well established by psychoanalysis. These unpleasant, uncomfortable, and disconcerting experiences are not in themselves the underground pests. It is rather the emotional effects resulting from them that constitute the evil mental forces in question. The reaction of them, rather than the original action, is the chief cause of the trouble. For instance, the emotional nature of the child or young person undergoing such an experience tends to react in the form of a phase of anger or fear, in some of their degrees, variations, or blendings. The hurt or bruise of the painful, uncomfortable, or discontenting experience, the affront, rebuke, insult, humiliation, mortification, wounded pride, frustrated purpose, imposition of the will of another person, defeated desire, injustice, tyranny, oppression, failure, or whatever it may be, tends to arouse anger. i.e., keen displeasure, resentment, and more or less desire to punish or get even with, or else fear, i.e., the painful apprehension or expectation of evil, accompanied by the desire to escape the feared experience, often both anger and fear. The reaction of anger tends to develop deep-seated grudges, resentments, indignation, sense of injustice, accompanied by more or less hatred and desire to hurt the offending person or thing, or that which resembles or is associated with such. The reaction of fear tends to develop fearfulness, fear thought, cowardice, lack of courage, faint-heartedness, timorousness, lack of self-confidence, timidity, and a general shy, shrinking, shriveling up, and retiring disposition, a wish to get away from things. The reactions of anger is extroversive, i.e., in the direction of going out toward or flying off to something outside in order to grapple with, fight, combat, struggle with, defeat, or destroy it. The reaction of fear is entroversion, i.e., the direction of shrinking back from, getting away from, retiring from outside things. The normal person manifests a balanced position between these two extremes. When an abnormal tendency in either direction is experienced, there is found to be operative, some lurking, painful memory now manifesting its hidden presence and action in the realms of the subconscious. The dead hand of past experience is seeking to exhibit its power over the experiences of the present. Many of us are more or less affected, influenced, and determined by the effects of such past experiences. We either harbor subconscious grudges, resentments, hatreds, malice, or other forms or phases of anger, or else the subconscious dreads, terrors, and aversions of fear, or combinations of both. These, be it noted, are not usually recognized in our conscious memory. The memory of the original causative experience has entirely passed out of consciousness. It is buried in the oblivion of the apparent forgetfulness, as we shall presently see. The subconscious actually takes great trouble to bury, conceal, suppress, and cover up the mental impression so as to make recollection of it difficult. But like a festering sore, the repressed memory abides on the subconscious realms, poisoning the entire system. Many of us have concealed cancerous, malignant sores of this kind in our subconscious mental being. But why does the subconscious strive to suppress and cover up these old memories, you may ask? The answer expresses one of the original discoveries of psychoanalysis. It is quite simple when you have it presented to you, but you would not be likely to stumble upon it otherwise. The answer, briefly stated, is this. The subconscious strives to suppress, repress, bury, hide, and cover up memories of this kind for the reason that in its nature to avoid pain, discomfort, and discontent. These memories being painful, uncomfortable, and discontenting, the subconscious strives to hide them, conceal them, cover them up. Just as in all nature, living animals and plants proceed instinctively to hide and cover up their wounds and hurt places. It is an instinctive protective action of nature. Sometimes the subconscious performs this work by overlaying the painful memory with those of a different nature. Again, it blends and mixes with it pleasant elements of other experiences, grafts new parts on it, as it were, so that finally the painful elements are lost to conscious memory and recollection. Psychoanalysis reveals many interesting cases of this kind in which an originally painful memory has been so overlaid or so grafted upon with new material that the unpleasant elements have been completely obscured. This would be wonderfully beneficial were it not for the fact that, alas, the roots of the trouble remain, only the above ground portions being removed. Or to employ another figure, the sore has been merely covered up, though uncured, and still manifesting its evil activities beneath the covering. Psychoanalysis searches for the roots and then destroys them, or it seeks to cure the cause, not merely to remove the symptoms. The pages of the reports of psychoanalysis are filled with definite reports of cases in which present troubles have been traced back to painful past experiences particularly to experiences in which the individual in his younger days was subjected to humiliation, degradation, abasement, mortification, shame, wounded pride, or injured vanity, suggestions of his inferiority, loss of dignity or self respect, in short, to wounds of his egoistic soul nature. In some cases, these causes have led to the cultivation and development of a character manifesting in shrinking, retiring, drawing back, shriveling up, or getting out of things, the timidity, faint heartedness, lack of self confidence, or the inferiority complex, marking the introversive effect of fear. In other cases, these causes have led to the cultivation and development of the character traits of quarrelsomeness, antagonism, resentment of things in general, prejudice, suspicion, jealousy, hatred, marking the extroversive effect of anger. Even in the cases in which the phobias, fears, prejudices, resentments, and antagonisms have been of a more limited character, they have been traced back to repressed, suppressed, buried, and covered up memories of experiences of the kind we have mentioned. For instance, a woman who had a morbid horror of snakes, almost an obsession of fear concerning them, a waking nightmare regarding them, was cured entirely when by psychoanalysis there was uncovered a forgotten experience of early childhood in which she had been terribly frightened by a toy serpent. Other phobias concerned with spiders, roaches, kittens, certain flowers, etc., have been uncovered and cured in the same way. Prejudices concerning persons of certain nationalities or callings have been traced back to painful or humiliating specific experiences of childhood, a cure being then effected. Unreasoning fears, panicky thoughts, prejudices, and hatreds of certain things have been uncovered and cured by the same general method. In short, the roots or sources of poisonous mental traits, tendencies, and mental attitudes have been found hidden under the surface of the conscious mentality, and the troubles have been cured by an application of these general principles. You now have two important questions pressing for answers, namely, one, how and why are these troubles cured by discovering, uncovering, and bringing into the light of consciousness their roots or sources? Two, by what methods may these roots and hidden causes be discovered, uncovered, and brought to light? In the answers to these two questions is to be found the gist of the effective principles of psychoanalysis. To answer them fully would require the writing or reading of many books and excursions into many fields of the general science of psychology, but we shall endeavor to give you in brief, concise form, the essential features of such answers. Concerning the first of the two questions, we would say that it is an old principle of psychology that if one can analyze, dissect, and classify cold-bloodedly the psychic elements involved in an emotion, then the heat, power, and energy of that emotion is dissolved, disintegrated, and dissipated. Emotions, as a rule, cannot stand a cold-blooded analysis. It chills them, often freezes them, sometimes kills them outright. Contact with the intellect tends to weaken emotion. Hence, beware of subjecting good emotions to such contact, but make it a point to subject bad emotions to it. This is a useful rule well worth remembering. This is the first factor of this particular answer. There is more to follow, however. When the root or source of a disturbing subconscious emotional disturbance has been traced to its origin and then uncovered and brought into the light of consciousness, it is subjected to the inspection of your intellect as now constituted, not as it was constituted at the time of the original experience. Your since acquired worldly wisdom, your evolved sense of the true value of things, your gradually developed philosophy of life and living, all these add new factors to your intellectual inspection and judgment upon these experiences. What originally seemed a tremendous and dreadful event or happening now succeeds in bringing merely a pitying smile to your face or a twinkle to your eye. In short, you are now looking with eyes of a matured individual upon the experiences of early childhood, youth, or period of adolescence. The mental bruises, like the physical ones of childhood, important and terrible as they seem to the young mind, are quite different things when viewed from the mental position of matured experience in the philosophy of manhood or womanhood. When the buried memory is located, uncovered, and subjected to the light of conscious inspection by the individual who has long since put away childish things, it is perceived, weighed, measured, and valued by him, just as are similar experiences which he perceives on all sides being undergone by the children and young folks of his acquaintance. He sees them for what they really are, not as the child sees them. Psychologically, the original impression is brought before his consciousness as a present happening event and is valued as such. And as its actual value is really slight, he realizes that it is not at all worthwhile. He is amazed at the insignificance, and he is able to smile at it before he casts it aside from him as a worthless trifle. Thereafter, it has no meaning nor importance to him. Its power over him has passed away, and he is free from its effects. The smoldering embers exposed to the air expire in a final flash and are reduced to ashes, the dust of which is blown away by the winds. Even apart from the specific and definite application of the principles of psychoanalysis, many persons may be benefited by a similar conscious reevaluation of old mental sores and bruises. By bringing them fully into consciousness, with all their original circumstances and associations, and then weighing, measuring, and revaluing them by your present standards in the light of your subsequently acquired experience and knowledge, you will find that they never really were nearly so great or so serious as you originally believed them to be. And you will discover that their present day importance, significance, and value is still less. Often it is nil. Vague introspection is a morbid, unprofitable task and a bad habit, but scientific psychoanalysis of past experiences, conducted with a definite purpose and end, is useful, constructive, and meets the test of positivity. For rightly approached and rightly conducted, it makes you stronger, better, and more efficient. In this connection, your attention should be called to that large class of cases in which the festering sore spot or the painful bruise in the subconscious memory has been caused by the feeling of shame, remorse, mortification, humiliation, inferiority, wickedness, vileness, filthiness, moral uncleanness, or reproach of conscience arising from some past experience, usually one of childhood, youth, or period of adolescence, connected with the secret desires, dreams, or cravings of, or possibly from some minor yielding, compromise, or slipping, connected with the reproductive or sexual organism and its emotional manifestation and expressions. This particularly when the child or young person has been severely reproached, reviled, or punished for the happening, which has been discovered by parents, teachers, or other adults. When the cry of unclean, unclean has been loudly raised and persistently repeated and recalled to mind. Those of us who have honest and efficient memories of our own days of childhood, youth, and period of adolescence know full well how frequent and common such early life experiences are. The insistent curiosity of the young child and youth and the unfolding process of puberty and adolescence result in innumerable cases of such painful and distressing experiences, the memory of which are too often then buried alive in the underground regions of the subconscious, thereafter to plague and worry the mind of the adult person. The intelligent psychoanalyst, when such subconscious emotional sore spots and bruised places are uncovered by the process of psychoanalysis, proceeds to throw the light of scientific knowledge and judgment upon these unpleasant things thus unearthed. He points out to the patient the fact that there is nothing essentially evil about the reproductive organism and its manifestations and expressions in themselves, nor when their activities occur under conditions approved of by the conventions, ethics, laws, customs, and morality of the time and place. That the evil or wrong arises only when these activities occur under opposite conditions, i.e., under conditions and circumstances disapproved of, or forbidden by the laws, customs, ethics, or morality of the time and place. That, in short, sexual evil and wrong consists of the abuse, misuse, and improper employment of these great natural forces, not of their existence and normal proper use and expression. He points out that consequently, the emotional disturbances arising from the existence of this natural organism and its subconscious activities are not devilish, evil, unclean, filthy, or depraved. That the person experiencing these subconscious disturbances should not regard himself or herself as soiled, polluted, or evil-minded. That the presence of this part of one's nature and the subconscious reminders of its existence do not constitute rational and proper causes for self-reproach, humiliation, mortification, shame, or remorse, and that the painful memories of past experiences of this kind and of the unpleasant results arising from their discovery, punishment, and reproaches should be dissipated, disintegrated, dissolved, and allowed to blow away on the winds of time. The idea of essential cleanness replaces the old thought of uncleanness. This is the curse taken off the memories. This leads to the rational, sane, scientific control, direction, and mastery of this part of one's nature. And as a consequence, a healthier mental, emotional, and physical condition is made possible. When the light is turned on, the darkness and its imaginary inhabitants disappear. The psychoanalyst also teaches the patient the value of the principle of sublimation, i.e., the transmutation of the elemental instinctive urge into new and other channels. For instance, the creative element underlying the reproductive instinct may be and often is transmuted or sublimated into creative work along mental, spiritual, artistic, constructive lines valuable in social life and progress. Some of the greatest workers for the world's good have been men and women who have sublimated and transmuted the reproductive instinct in this way, though they may not have recognized the cause of their zeal nor the source of their energy. Sublimation or transmutation is the technical term employed in psychoanalysis to designate the action compensating the individual for the frustration of an instinctive energy, tendency, or craving, by means of which the energy associated with the instinct is directed to socially useful and beneficial ends and purposes, which also serve the best interests of the individual. The term is borrowed from the ancient alchemists who sought to sublime or transmute the baser metals into gold and thus obtain higher values from the material. In sublimation, a higher value is obtained from the elemental basic instincts. Sublimation is also a transference of basic instincts to other instincts. In it, the energy which would otherwise be short-circuited with danger to the individual and to society is thrown into work, especially creative work, along other lines of human endeavor and expression. In it, some dominant instinctive craving is sidetracked by switching it into other lines of work and activity. This method has been found to be quite practical, for, as Dr. Lay says, it has been proved over and over again that humans can get interested in anything, particularly anything human, the only requisite being the same as that of the love of men for women and of women for men, that it is a complete devotion to and absorption in the work that they are doing to the utter forgetfulness of self. The methods devised by psychoanalysis for the location, discovery, uncovering, and bringing into the light of conscious inspection the hidden and covered up sore spots and bruised places of the subconscious may be classified as follows. 1, free association. 2, analysis and interpretation of dream symbols. And 3, mental catharsis. Each of these we shall now consider briefly. The essential features and factors of each shall be presented for your inspection, the innumerable details being left for the treatment given them in the scientific works devoted to the special technique of psychoanalysis. Free association. In this method, the underlying principle is the well-known law of association of ideas of modern psychology. This law may be stated as follows. The stream of ideas is continuous, each idea or thought being linked with the one that immediately precedes it and one which immediately succeeds it. All one's ideas have certain definite associations with all his other ideas, though there are cases in which the connection cannot be traced in consciousness. Professor E.B. Titchener says, there is no distinct bit of consciousness answering to the associative bond, but only conscious processes standing related and hence more or less unified. The associated contents are now rich and now a mere thread. The mass is now intensive and now weak, now clear and now obscure, now directed by a single element and now by the union of two or more streams of influence, now run through with pleasantness and now actively indifferent. Successive association is, like every consciousness, kaleidoscopic, picking up processes here and dropping others there, but carried always by a common core, so that there is never a jump from one stage to another, never a hiatus within the chain, but invariably a gradual transition from point to point. When you think about anything, no matter what it may be, you will find yourself afterward thinking of something associated with and suggested by the thing first thought of. You may satisfy yourself of this at once, if you doubt it, by a trial. You will find invariably that thinking of any one thing causes you to also think of some other thing associated with or suggested by the first thing, and so on and on. This is the fact that underlies the law of association of ideas. There are many forms and phases of such association, but the distinction between them need not be considered here. The fact which we are now concerned is that ideas do flow in a stream of association through the field of consciousness. The stream is continuous, flowing on and on and on so long as we continue to think. A is followed by B, then comes C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, and so on until something intervenes to divert conscious attention somewhere else. More than this, psychology teaches that every impression or record stored in the subconscious memory is linked by some, usually many, associative or suggestive bonds to every other impression or record stored there. Consequently, if we start with any thought as a loose end, we may in time unwind an unbroken thread until we come to the particular knot for which we were searching. This would take much time ordinarily, but it has been found that by free association, the subconscious speedily makes a shortcut or bridge over the intervening space and attaches Z to A without need of our thinking of the intermediate links, just as we frequently say from A to Z instead of naming the intervening letters of the alphabet. Just why the subconscious does this, not but the subconscious itself seems to know, but it itself will not tell. Enough for us, however, is the fact that it does do it. The psychoanalyst seeking to locate and uncover a subconscious sore spot or bruised place starts into operation the process of free association. He asks the patient to think of something, anything will do, and then to allow the process of free association to proceed to wind up the loose end of the mental yarn without interference from the conscious mentality or will. He is not to think for a purpose. However, neither is he to deliberately build fanciful air castles of imagination. All that he is to do is to keep hands off, to keep out of it, and allow the subconscious mental machinery to do the rest. And do just that, it certainly will. In free association, the individual becomes a passive spectator of the kaleidoscopic panorama of passing thoughts, ideas, memories, mental pictures. He withdraws his will, his judgment, his criticism, his tastes, and allows the mental stream to flow past unhindered by conscious intervention or interference. In free association, each thought or idea liberates the next one purely by reason of some sympathetic association between them and without being influenced by an intellectual interference. This is why it is called free. The person merely sits on the fence and watches the circus procession go by. The marching elephants and camels, the string of caged animals and clowns, the bandwagon and all the rest, pass by the silent spectator. A writer says, the sort of mental attitude aimed at is not a hard one to acquire and is in reality more of a knack than anything else. And when the requisite mental condition is apprehended, a little practice will enable one to comply with the requirements quite easily. Here is an actual illustrative example. The person is sitting with pencil in hand and with paper before him is asked to think of the word Lusitania and to mark down each item of the associated stream of ideas flowing from that source. He thinks of the sinking of the ship of that name by the submarine, then of the Germans, then of the Great War, then of the entrance of the United States into the conflict, then of the young Americans who were called to duty for their country, then of a particular young man who volunteered, then of Fort Benjamin Harrison, to which that young man was sent after his enlistment, then of the former President Benjamin Harrison, after whom the fort was named, then of the grandfather of that former president himself, a president, then of his grandfather's hat, which the former person often was pictured as wearing, then of Uncle Sam, who wears a similar hat in the familiar cartoons, then of his long since deceased particular uncle named Samuel and known to the thinker as Uncle Sam, then of a certain case of real or fancied injustice to the thinker, a very old sore spot or bruised place arousing irritation, vexation, resentment, and a deeply seated grievance or grudge in which this particular Uncle Sam was a leading participant. Then comes the startling realization that this particular grievance and grudge had served to poison the mental and emotional life of the thinker for many years and had given to him a decided undesirable trend of thought, feeling, and action. This recognition then causes a revelation of that ancient experience and a consequent dismissal of it as having been a case of much ado about nothing, and a belated recognition of the two sides of the question. This particular example will serve to illustrate the entire principle and process of free association. The loose end may be any idea or thought chosen at random, or by the professional psychoanalyst, or by the person who is psychoanalyzing himself. The subconscious will soon make the shortcut or bridge of association from at least G to Z, leaving out the intermediate letters. There is no chance about it. The process follows a law as regular and constant as that governing the tides or as the law of gravitation. Seemingly devoid of any logical character, it really follows the law of exact logical order and sequence. There is one factor, though, which must always be present, the factor of absolute honesty regarding the ideas coming to view in the passing stream. No matter how unpleasant, how distasteful, how unnice, how shocking the ideas may be at times, they must be taken account of and noted down. Otherwise, the logical sequence is interrupted and the experiment spoiled. Neither should apparent nonsensicality, whimsicality, or seeming irrelevance be allowed to cause a passing idea, thought, or associated link to be overlooked or discarded. These little things often are the great things of the process. The flow must be kept free in view of the fact that all freely flowing mental associations eventually lead clear into the very core of the subconscious thought tendencies, which constitute the object of the analysis and search. Sooner or later, something unpleasant and painful is sure to be reached. Such must not be dodged. Occasional interruptions, stoppages, or breaks in the flowing stream usually denote the approaching presence of sore spots or bruised places, which the subconscious shrinks from uncovering because of the lurking fear of pain. Such interruptions or breaks indicate that there is present a sensitiveness resulting from near approach to the sores or bruises. Here should be noted an interesting and important fact, namely, when you reach the final idea or thought serving to cover up the sore or bruise, you will know it at once. Something will seem to say, here it is, or that is it, and a flood of forgotten memories will burst into consciousness. You will know that your quest is finished, your analysis completed. Analysis and interpretation of dream symbols. In this method, the principle of free association is likewise employed, but with this difference, namely that instead of choosing the loose end of thought at random, one starts from some definite element of a remembered dream and then allows the stream of association to flow freely as previously described. The dream is split up into its component parts, each thing, quality, and action, each element represented by a noun, adjective, adverb, or verb, being regarded as a distinct component part. These component parts are then tried out in succession along the lines of free association until, in the separate or combined report, there is revealed the location and form of the sore or bruise. The fundamental secret underlying this application of the general method of psychoanalysis may be stated as follows. Dreams are symbolic dramatizations of disturbing subconscious elements of memory. In symbolic form, they represent the repressed, suppressed, covered up, painful wish, fear, or weakness. They always have a hidden meaning, which may be found and translated by means of scientific psychoanalysis. Their symbols give very effective loose ends from which to unwind the ball of hidden memory by means of free association. Sanely and intelligently employed, this method produces valuable results. It is to be regretted, however, that some overenthusiastic followers of the Freudian teaching have carried this principle to such an absurd and fantastic extreme as to cast ridicule upon it and to cause many persons to overlook the scientific and valuable elements involved in it. Mental catharsis. This method, as the name implies, is of a cathartic, cleansing, purifying nature. In mental catharsis, there is made a determined effort to get out of the system many objectionable emotional states, resentments, grudges, old sores, and bruises by means of bringing them into the field of consciousness by an act of will, and then sterilizing or neutralizing them by the power of the light of attention, reason, and will. This process of inspection is aided by expressing in words the real character of these objectionable states, calling them by name and showing that you have their number. Employing another figure, we may say that by putting them into verbal form, attaching terms and names to them, particularly in speaking aloud the names, you tend to crystallize them into definite form and into an extremely brittle condition so that you may deal with them a hearty blow with the hammer of the will directed by the eye of reason. This reduces them to dust, which the winds then blow away. Face up the objectionable tendencies. Call them by name. Speak out their real names. Turn the light of conscious attention upon them, the light that penetrates every part of them and shows plainly and in bold relief every hateful quality. Instead of hiding them away from yourself, drag them out into the light and look at them. Analyze them, dissect them, tear them into pieces by the application of relentless, ruthless analytical reason. Then disperse the fragments. You will find it easy to get rid of them when they are in this form. Hiding them, concealing them, covering them up from yourself only means burying them alive and having them work mischief for you. Drag them out, face them up, see them for what they are, call them by their right names, and then get rid of them. You will often find that these hidden things of the soul are really things not essentially evil or harmful, perhaps even good in their right place and time under the right conditions and environment, but which are bad when out of place and time and under the wrong conditions and circumstances. Dirt, filth, refuse, garbage, and other objectionable material are usually something all right and good in the right place, but quite bad in other places. Your mind and soul is not the right place for such refuse, garbage, and dirt. Drag it out and have it hauled away to the dumping place for such things. Repression and concealment, hiding and covering up, only intensifies the evil. Drag it out into the light and air of conscious attention and then cast it away from you. Do not try to fool yourself. You can't, for your subconscious is on the job. Cleanse, purify, and renovate your mental kingdom by means of the principle and method of mental catharsis. This is the only way.